call the Senate Finance meeting to order. It's Wednesday, members, February 10th. As I said, this is the Senate Finance Committee's first hearing, a hybrid. So really, I'm excited to see how this operates. Right now, we just have on our schedule the presentation from MMB on the governor's FY 22-23 budget recommendations. And we should have with us Commissioner Jim Showalter and State Budget Director Britta Rattan. So with that, we'll have that overview. And members, there was information passed out, and you should either have that available in your email or there is physical copies here for those members that are showing up. Who would like to start first? Commissioner, are you online?
I am. Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't.
All right, good. Thanks. Thanks, Madam Chair. I appreciate the invitation and opportunity to present the governor's budget. For the record, my name is Jim Showalter, Commissioner of Minnesota Management and Budget, and I too hope this hybrid hearing goes well. It is, again, pushing the envelope and helping us figure out how to get to a new normal. While I start, Laura Lane will be putting up on the screen and sharing a brief slide deck. With me is State Budget Director Britta Rattan, and we're happy to walk through some of the materials that gives you an overview of the governor's budget recommendations and gives you some of the key initiatives that are in front of the various finance divisions at this moment. Overall, this budget was just released just a short while ago, and I just want to sort of comment that while I've had the opportunity to work on many biennial budgets, and each one is always a little unique, this one is more unique than any of the other ones. And it's in large part because we're in the midst of a crisis. We're in the midst of many changes going on around us. And the governor's challenge was not just to put forward a 2-year blueprint, a biennial budget vision and set of priorities, but to do so while major pieces of information and context were moving in real time. To wit, the second, we had I've already had one special session since the November forecast, which changed and offered small business assistance and provided other assistance to respond to COVID-19. Congress has passed a second stimulus bill since that November forecast that impacts some of the opportunities and issues in this budget. We're finding a change in administration has changed federal policy and participation all at the same time that we're trying to work through the changes in COVID-19. So, the governor, when he hired me, reminded me, and we talked about, what's the importance of a budget, and it's a statement of values, it's a statement of vision of where we're trying to go, and as the next slide suggests, that really is for this budget about recovery from COVID-19. The initiatives are really built around 3 separate pillars. And as the State Budget Director will go through more specifics, you'll see that there's really 3 kind of competing and supporting priorities in this budget. One is supporting small businesses and driving economic recovery. The impacts of the pandemic on small businesses are just undeniable. And they're also diffuse. Some businesses have been absolutely slammed, obviously. Entertainment, eating, hospitality, particularly impacted during this period. On the other hand, some other businesses have been doing very well. And so how do we make sure that Minnesota-based businesses have the opportunity to recover, gain employment, and get back to pre-pandemic levels? Ensuring students catch up on learning. There are many studies that are out there, but you don't have to really go to a study. You just have to go to a parent to ask how kids are doing during this period. If they are not going to school, if they're doing learning, if they are, even if they're doing hybrid, there are a lot of lost opportunities and a lot of achievement gap has gotten worse. So how do we deal with that? How do we help kids so that this pandemic is a period of time and not a legacy? And finally, supporting working families, because all of that pressure comes on families. It comes on working families where one or both parents are working, trying to make ends meet, trying to be a child care provider, trying to be an educator, part-time educator. A lot of stress is going on. And so the third plank is, what are the things that we need to do to support working families now and going into the future? On the next slide, I'll just sort of walk through the math architecture. So while we have a vision and the governor's really pointing towards a recovery, and what are the things that we need to do to help establish what we look like next. And it's not, I got to make sure I say, it's not the same as it was before, but it's like, where are we going to? That it also has to add up. And the governor's budget recommendation does add up. It does provide a blueprint going forward. We start with the November forecast adjusted by the seventh special session. And you see that we have an enviable place of starting. We have a beginning balance that includes almost $1.9 billion in budget reserves, cash flow account of $230 million, and a stadium reserve of $230 million. We've got actually the wherewithal to continue managing and assess what's going on forward. That is very different than where the state was positioned a little over 10 years ago during the Great Recession. At that point in time, we'd already spent down our reserves. We were really entering a period where every month was a question about the cash flow for the state. We're in a very different position, and that is a great place to be. Not all states are positioned so well. I thank the Senate, I thank the House and legislative leadership and the governor for getting us to that place. But that doesn't mean that we can just lean on that. So what you see here is the impact of the governor's budget recommendations. That included in these recommendations are net $1.663 billion in increased revenues. That includes revenue increases, the fifth tier, corporate tax increases, and net revenue decreases, including expansion of the working family credit. It includes $1.3 billion in new spending, which includes additional spending for K-12, many other activities, and some net reductions for a net number of $1.3 billion, ultimately leading us to a balance of around $470 million at the end of the biennium. That is the sort of the ultimate challenge, is how do we address about a $1.3 billion budget challenge? It is wrapped up through both a use of $1 billion in the reserves, increased revenues to finance the kind of spending, the kind of activity that's necessary to reach the vision of supporting families, helping close the achievement gap, and helping businesses continue and grow so that we can move past this pandemic period. That's kind of the overview, Madam Chair, of the governor's budget recommendations. We're going to go into more specifics in each of these areas, and particularly by bill area. But I'll just pause for a moment in case there's any introductory questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any questions for the Commissioner on what we have covered so far? What do I have to? Okay, sorry. Are there, thank you, Commissioner. Are there any questions for what we've covered so far? Commissioner, or Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are a bit rusty on this process here in the hearing room, but it's very good to be here, Madam Chair, and thank you for doing so, and thank you, Commissioner Showalter, that you are joining us today. A very important period of time that we have here. Probably one of the biggest things that I think is important for us to understand, though, we had a federal fund influx to the state of Minnesota. We have a second one that's coming now and a possible third. So if we could maybe just talk about right now the first round of federal funds, how are they going to interact with the budget? Could you just explain how you see that working?
Commissioner.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Senator, great question. So that first influx of CARES funds, it certainly has been an ongoing back and forth authorization period, reporting period. You had monthly, actually weekly it might have been monthly, reports from our department, and we've got information on the spending and sort of allocation of that money on our website for that entire period. How does that interact with the budget is a great question, because federal funds are not just technically, they literally are separated from state general fund. Now, so as you well know, we have a separate federal fund that is different from the general fund, and what I've been reporting so far has been strictly general fund oriented. There's the environmental funds, there's all of these other funds that are out there. So far, this presentation has really been about just that general fund. So what is the interaction? I think that the first and key piece is that it has taken some pressure off of competing demands from the general fund. So, the governor's recommendations about recovery from the pandemic would look a lot different if it were not for that first stimulus bill, and particularly the second stimulus bill and the opportunities to finance vaccination efforts, continued testing efforts, help in long-term care facilities and other places. Those were needs that one way or another, the governor was going to need to pursue funds to make sure that we got those services out to Minnesotans. Because of those federal funds, you're not seeing some of those requests. For that first CARES bill, probably the most obvious impact is still coming, which is cancellations that will show up in the February forecast. What's happening right now is that on those CARES funds, most of those have been expended. We reported on those around December 30th, but there are some pots of money, some reimbursements now that we're starting to get out from FEMA that haven't shown up, and we weren't really all that confident in November that they were going to show up. At this point, it is pretty clear that we're going to be able to get some FEMA reimbursement. As those accrue to the accounts of general fund spending, where we've got FEMA reimbursement, that money will then show up and be part of our estimated cancellations in the February forecast. So there's kind of two different things. One is it's a separate pot of money, so it's not really literally showing up in the general fund. But there are some reimbursements in some places where we will be getting revenue that will be included in the February forecast estimate. Those numbers are not included in the governor's budget recommendations.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Probably the biggest thing when we think of our budget right now, though, is, yes, I understand that separate pot of money, federal money, and so on, but probably the biggest thing is that it's our checkbook, it's the state checkbook, it's the Minnesota people that are affected by those funds. So I think it's really important to understand that. What I'm kind of getting the impression from you now, though, is that there is going to be some overlap, but it's going to show up in the February forecast, which to date it has not done so. So your expectation, Commissioner Showalter, is that this will be merged a little more so that we can see, as we call it, the all funds picture, not just the general fund, but all the funds, so we can have a global perspective. So if I just can confirm again, your anticipation is that in February forecast, we will see those federal funds put into one presentation, is that correct?
Commissioner.
Madam Chair, Senator, I didn't say that, and I'm not sure that I am saying that. What I think you're going to see is that from the general fund perspective, there will be some places where we will see impacts coming into the general fund due to revenues, receipts, reimbursements that allow for cancellations that create undesignated, unobligated general fund information. Separately, so that's what I sort of said was coming. Separately in the forecast, we always give you the all funds view. So there will always be a document, always documents about where all the funds are at, what the aggregate spend and revenue picture for the state is, whether you're talking about the Healthcare Access Fund, the federal funds, the general fund, that is also going to be there for the forecast. But I think there's kind of like two different views. And the one that I was referring to is really like, what are some of the general fund impacts that when you say, what's the budget surplus? What's the budget deficit? That there's going to be some interaction of the federal funds at that point in time.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm glad I asked the question so that we could clarify that, because that was the point of why I wanted to be clear on that. And yes, we've had the all funds budget before. but I don't think we've had it to the tune of the billions and billions that we're having now during such a unique time. So this is unlike some of the things we've had, quote, normally in the past, so it will be a little bit different. I think the other question I have, if I could, Madam Chair, is there any state match? And if there is that specified somewhere that we know? Is there any requirement for a state match as any part of these funds?
Commissioner Showalter. So,
Madam Chair, Senator, I think given that there's already been two federal stimulus bills and a multitude of programs underneath that, I'm going to have a hard time giving you kind of a blanket answer because there are some instances where there are maintenance of effort requirements. I think State Budget Director will probably get into one of those a little later. But, you know, in some cases, you know, like for FEMA reimbursement, if I had answered that question in November, there was a state, you know, upfront cost, and now that's been changed. So there's a multitude of answers underneath that. But by and large, you know, these federal funds were coming in for assistance purposes. I see the State Budget Director jumping in. So I'm going to let her answer that perhaps as specifically as you might want. Britta?
Good morning, Budget Director Rattan, and please fill in the blanks. Thank you.
Good morning, Senator Rosen. I just wanted to highlight that in the federal funds summary document that's submitted with the governor's budget, there is specifically called out whether there's maintenance of effort and match requirements for each federal fund. And as the commissioner is highlighting, it really depends on the actual federal funding stream. And in each of these allocations, there have been a multitude of federal funding streams. So it's hard to answer kind of in a blanket way. The commissioner did highlight that there is a maintenance of effort requirement for the new federal education funding. And I think that's important to call out because the current language suggests that the state needs to maintain the same effort in education spending as a percentage of their overall budget. And the way Minnesota has been spending on education, it's comparing to the years 17, 18, and 19, 2017, 18, and 19, and the average of those years. The way Health and Human Services spending has grown has meant that other spending areas on a percentage basis are not keeping pace. However, as we all know, on a dollar basis, we are growing our education effort every year. So that is the way the current maintenance of effort requirement is written, is that we need to maintain a percentage of our spend on education as the same percentage as the average of 2017, 18, and 19. We are working currently with the U.S. Department of Education to see if there is a waiver we could receive, or if they could change the interpretation of that, since we are in fact under the forecast and in the governor's budget growing our spend in education on a per pupil and a total dollar basis. And typically that's what a maintenance of effort requirement is. It's not a percentage of your overall spend.
Budget Director, could you please state your name and your title for the record? Thank you.
My apologies. Yes, this is Britta Rattan, State Budget Director with MMB.
Thank you very much. And
I'll just wrap it up, Madam Chair, for this period, and that is the school districts have contacted me, and they're very concerned about that maintenance of effort. And this affects all of our school districts everywhere, especially during this time. So I think it's going to be really, really important. We have joined with our superintendents in my area and contacted the federal representatives that we have and asked them to intervene for us and to get this clarified, because it's a critical issue, not just for the state of Minnesota, but also for the school districts themselves. Thank you, Madam
Senator
Chair.
Meyer. Senator Marty.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Budget Director. I guess my question is, since the 17, 18, 19, how much has our actual maintenance of effort, how much has it grown since we've at least maintained? How much has it grown, and how much different is it if we had to factor in the same percentage of the budget? And then finally, related to the point Senator Kiffmeyer just asked, responsibility for this, I assume it's the state's responsibility. We're the ones who have to maintain the effort. And if districts, for some reason, if they is that factored in? Is it state spending? Or in other words, if a school district does not renew a referendum or something, does that go against us?
Director Raton.
Senator Marty, those are all excellent questions. It is a state effort, so it is not at the district level. Unfortunately, this is one of my difficulties with the remote environment. I don't have a piece of paper in front of me with the numbers, but I do have that analysis. And so we could follow up with you after the fact to provide you the actual numbers about the change in terms of overall spend and percentage. But I would have to flip to a different screen on my computer and don't want to lose you.
Director
you.
Raton, could you please give that to the committee, and then we can get that out, if you don't mind, Senator Martin.
Certainly.
That would be great, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the interest of moving along quickly, I'll just ask real briefly a question from the commissioner. With regards to tax revenue, new taxes coming are being proposed by the governor. Can you give me an idea in this time of unemployment and just really tough times in general, how the governor or why the governor would be thinking about raising new revenue like that? I represent a fairly conservative district out here, but if you go down on Main Street anywhere and just say we're going to raise taxes now, they kind of look at you like, wow, that's just a little bit over the, a little bit over the top with this very extreme conditions. Can just give me just a real quick, brief sentence on that, and then I'll let you move on.
Commissioner Showalter.
Madam Chair, Senator, great question. And, as you're going down Main Street, my guess is most of the people, if you said, the tax is applied to somebody with an income of $20,000, they say, oh, I know somebody with an income of $20,000. But this tax is applied to somebody with an income of $20,000 a week, not a year. The fifth tier is really affecting a very small number of individuals in Minnesota who have basically been benefiting from the economy of late. In order to help make sure that the people on Main Street can recover, sustain themselves, and get through this pandemic. The same thing is true on the corporate side. We know that, that we can all talk about and see in our Main Streets businesses that have closed, that have cut hours, that are struggling to get by. But you don't have to go too far to see an Amazon truck or find other businesses that are doing very, very well. In fact, corporate revenues for large corporations are doing great. That's part of the reason why the November forecast was the way it is. The GDP may have shrunk, but the income from some parts of our economy is doing just great. So the taxes are really targeted to the parts of the economy and the individuals who are benefiting from the last few years, and making sure that that money is used to help everyone, all Minnesotans, get through this period.
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
No, I guess we could argue back and forth as to who the $20,000 a week people are. I'm sure they're the employers, but no, let's go. Due to the constraint of time here, we'll just go forward.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that conversation will continue about who the wealth is and our mass exodus from the state of our wealthy. But I do have a couple questions. No, I see Senator Benson. We'll go with you, and then I'll follow up. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think you started to make my point.
Madam Chair, Senator Benson.
Madam Chair, sorry. I'm sorry. The people who make $20,000 a week can choose to live wherever they want to. And so I don't like defending people who make $20,000 a week. I'm just calling out the math that says they can go buy a house in Florida or Texas or Arizona, and we'll never get their money anyway, and they'll take their employees with them because they're going to want their people close to them. And so there's going to be a long debate about this, but let's not get too excited about the revenue from those folks who are going to be able to move and live wherever they want to.
Thank you, Senator Benson. Just a couple questions before we move on that I was thinking about. Is the Director Raton, this maintenance of effort and the eligibility, where are we at with that? We are setting targets right now, and I believe that we need to have an idea of our the possibility of this waiver?
Madam Chair, I appreciate that. We feel that urgency as well. I know we are working on some outreach with the Department of Education. At this point, my understanding is that the first contact we had with them is that the waiver process was quite a ways into the future, months away. And so we are explaining the problem that we have, that we need to know sooner than that, whether we have a waiver or if they are willing to entertain a different measure for the maintenance of effort.
Okay, thank you. And Director Raton, or the Commissioner, at one time you said that, well, of course, the Treasury keeps bringing in some different guidelines. Can you all hear me? We have apparently frozen. Okay, we're up. And it's at 75% reimbursement, but there might be some guidelines now to say it's 100% reimbursement. That's one question, where are we at with what percentage of reimbursement? The other one is it just that, the FEMA reimbursement, or is it the entire $3.1 billion of this package going to be in the February forecast? How is that going to be measured or calculated?
Madam Chair, the FEMA reimbursement is currently at 100% for this emergency. And so we are moving forward with that assumption. And the portion that will be recognized in the general fund forecast, the portion of the federal dollars, will be the dollars that offset general fund spending. And so really that's focused on the FEMA eligible expenses that have been paid through the general fund or through a fund such as the COVID Minnesota Fund that now cancels back to the general fund.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Senator Johnson. Senator Johnson, you are muted. There you go. There you go.
Can you hear me? Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to get back real quick to what Senator Engebretson was talking about. A little bit on Main Street. I don't think the governor's budget request had any conformity with the federal fund tax treatment on the PPP loans. So this is going to have a big impact, not only our small businesses, but pretty much everybody took this, churches, nonprofits, and how they're treated tax. I know is different, but just wondering if the governor is looking into that, wants to do some conformity. If not, that's going to be a big impact on our small Main Street businesses. Wondering what your approach to that's going to be.
Commissioner Showalter.
Madam Chair, Senator, great question. I was talking to Commissioner Doty about that just the other day, and I know that is something that he and the Revenue Department are looking at this point. You're right, is not included in the governor's recommendations. Something we're trying to get a handle on, the impacts. I do know that the fiscal impact of full conformity would be in the several hundreds of millions of dollars. So the pretend, and that just gives you a sense, I think, of the size and magnitude of the PPP program, the importance of the federal stimulus package for businesses, and the kind of reason why the federal government has been engaged in trying to help the economy move forward. So as of this point, you're absolutely right, Senator. That is not a part of the recommendations. I know it is something we're trying to work through and look at. But from the information we're presenting to you right now, that additional conformity is not part of the recommendation.
Senator Johnson. Further questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was the question that I also had, was the conformity to the PPE. But one of the things that just amazes me here is kind of the contradiction of words of saying we care about those Main Street folks, but what they're saying is for them, instead of giving them a cash check, which they've appreciated, but they much rather be doing their business and earning their income themselves than getting a check from the government. But probably this federal full conformity, because if we don't do federal conformity, are we going to be using cash money, grants, lotteries, other kinds of things. That's not what they want. They would rather we take that money and use it for federal tax conformity. That's their business. That's their way that they can help make it through this incredibly difficult time, and affects every single business on our main streets, big or small, in a very specific way. And so it's just kind of puzzling that this area probably has the greatest benefit all across Minnesota to have this full federal tax conformity more than anything, and that it's not in the governor's budget. I'm just really, really puzzled by that. So, Madam Chair, I'm hoping we're going to maybe see the governor change some of these things. I know you make proposals and other things happen, but this is really important to our small businesses.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kipper. I don't see any other further questions. Who would like to continue? Director Raton?
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, my name is Britta Raton, State Budget Director. And Laura, if you'll pull up the slide deck again, I'm going to walk through a little bit of detail under each of these themes that the Commissioner has highlighted. So the first focus I'm going to walk through is ensuring that students catch up on learning. So this is really a focus on our education systems, both E12 and higher ed. So the governor's budget recommends 57.5 million of the federal funding in the most recent bill be allocated towards expanding summer programming for 2021. So to offer summer programming that is voluntary and full day programming this summer for additional students. The governor's budget also includes 20 million for summer early learning to support 12 weeks of programming for over 4,000 4- and 5-year-olds. An additional investment is the investment in the basic education formula. The governor's budget includes 1% in the first year, or 2022, and 2.5% on the basic formula in 2023. And the lower percentage in the first year is really recognizing that schools are anticipating to receive a significant amount of federal funding in that first year, with the most recently enacted bill at the federal level in December. And so it's really scaling up the state support in the second year of the biennium. Additionally, the governor once again includes a recommendation to hold the cross subsidy for special education steady. The cross subsidy is the amount of unfunded costs that districts need to cover through general revenues to fund their special education programs. And the amount of the investment in the governor's budget, the 73 million, is intended to make sure the amount of that cross subsidy does not continue to grow. The governor's budget also includes funding for student support personnel. This would establish a new formula to fund counselors, nurses, and social workers. It would support approximately 325 professionals statewide, and that's a total cost of 47 million. Additionally, as you know, in the 2021 budget, we funded pre-K seats on a one-time basis. About 4,000 pre-K seats were funded on a one-time basis. The governor's budget includes 41 million to continue supporting those 4,000 pre-K seats in the 22-23 biennium. In addition, there is an additional investment in equalization funding, which would increase the state share of various formulas that are a mix of state aid and levy. This is really targeting funding at low property wealth school districts, and that has a cost of 95 million. In addition, the governor's budget includes a number of investments that help address the opportunity gap in Minnesota. One example is $10 million in funding for the expansion of rigorous coursework for BIPOC students or students of color. This would fund grants to expand offerings for advanced placement, international baccalaureate, concurrent enrollment in career and technical education in school districts to expand those opportunities. The governor's budget also includes investments in higher education. There's 35 million in a workforce stabilization funding program, which would be managed through the Office of Higher Education, and would provide grants for tuition and fees for individuals impacted by COVID in order that they may pursue retraining at a public higher education institution. Additionally, the governor's budget provides $110 million in operating support for our institutions of higher education, the U of M and Minnesota State. That's $46.5 million for the University of Minnesota and $63.5 million for Minnesota State.
Director Raton, I think we'll stop here for a couple questions. The first one is
Certainly.
Senator Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, a comment and then to my question. First of all, I just want to point out that the support for the student support services personnel, I think, is so badly needed. It was needed before the pandemic, and we're just seeing increasing evidence about the challenges that our students and their families have been facing through the pandemic. And so this is really timely. And I just want to remind everybody, because this is an issue that I personally have been working on since I got into the Senate. The student support personnel, it is a category in law, and it includes counselors, social workers, psychologists, nurses, and chemical dependency counselors. And when you put that collection of professionals together, Minnesota ranks literally at the bottom in the United States in our support for those particular professionals. And so this is urgently needed, and I really appreciate that. My question for Ms. Raton is a specific one about the cross subsidy. I know that's complicated because of the way that all gets handled between our funding and the way the districts spend their money, and it's the collection of the mandates from both the federal government and the state. What's the mechanism for how those funds will be taken advantage of by our districts to solve that problem?
Director Raton.
I have to admit, Senator Kent and Madam Chair, I don't have the details in exactly how that formula functions. So I apologize, but we can get back to you with that answer in terms of how that actually flows. I don't want to give you an incorrect response.
Senator Kent.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll get that answer, and perhaps we can drill down more in another committee too on this. But to segue onto Senator Kent's question before I go to Senator Marty, is the Expand Summer 20, the first one, the programming for $57.5 million, the preschool for 4 to 5, summer preschool for $20 million, perhaps even the student support personnel for $47 million. There's a very strong argument, wouldn't you agree, that that could be COVID related and could be expensed out through perhaps this round of funding or the next round of funding? And if we do that, I'm not looking for a guarantee, but I would like to see those monies supplanted or back into the general fund for any money that is used in those areas that were directly influenced because of COVID.
Madam Chair, the $57.5 million for the summer school support is relying on the federal dollars from December.
Federal funding, yes, okay.
Yep. But you're correct. If we had more federal funding that would be allowed to be used for that purpose, that could be possible. I just want to flag that it would depend on what is allowed in the next bill. The current bill, the governor's budget, uses much of the flexible funds for the summer learning program. The other funds go via formula directly to school districts. And so we have less ability to flexibly decide how those funds are used. They flow through formula on the Title I formula to school districts.
And perhaps, I don't know if you know this, Director Raton, but how much more is in that flexible funding for education? If he uses 57.5 million already, how much is left after that?
Madam Chair, I believe it's about 20 million more. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it's approximately 20 million. And the governor's budget does include a change page that specifies the intended uses that the governor would use those dollars for. And child care for school-aged children is one of those uses, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Senator Marty?
Madam
Senator,
Chair.
excuse me, Senator Marty. Senator Kent, to this point?
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to follow up on your question. And I'm not sure of all the different categories that you had mentioned, but specifically the one about the student support services. I know that that's challenging if we try to use that in any way that looks like one-time money. And I know that's a conversation we're going to have, but for districts to get funding for staff it makes it hard for them to hire staff. And we're talking about 325 potential positions here that are badly needed. And so, like I said, this is not just a matter of, it is important in terms of the pandemic, but this is a bigger challenge for our students that's longer lasting than just the immediate need.
Thank you, Senator Kent. Now, Senator Marty, my apologies.
No problem, Madam Chair. The first thing that I wanted to do was second what Senator Kent said. I was planning to comment on the student support services, how far behind we are the rest of the country and how far we are behind the student needs. So I'm glad that's in there. My other one is just a simple question, and it relates back to the cost subsidy. The 73 million keeps it where it is. What would the cost be? How much is the total cost now if we were to eliminate that cost subsidy?
Director Raton?
Senator Marty, that is an excellent question, and one I don't have an answer to at the ready, but I know it's about $800 per pupil is the cross subsidy. So I could scratch out some math, but I think I will get the answer from the Department of Education and get back to you on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's it.
Thank you, Senator Marty. Senator Kiffmeyer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Probably one of the things when I read about some of these is to remember the interaction with the communities as a whole. And one interaction that this can affect is the family child care businesses in Minnesota. So when they have their structure and they take care of infants and toddlers and preschoolers and after-school age children, that mix of the children that they have, the most time-intensive, of course, are the little ones, the babies and the toddlers. But when they have that mix of the 3- and 4-year-olds, they're able to keep siblings together, which is really important. So we got to remember when we take a look at this, because I know the child care situation is also essential. 85% of rural Minnesota use the family in-home child care. So it's a really big issue, but we got to be really careful about the interaction of some of these things and how it can affect the community as a whole, especially in this area. And I look at some of these things, and I think that can have an effect on them in a negative way. We certainly want to, first of all, take care of the kids and make sure they're well done, which they are in these child care homes that they are. They are given great care and also given educational opportunity as well. They do that as a matter of course, and actually helps having the 3- and 4-year-olds who are talking, and they work with them on math. The little toddlers hear that, kind of like in your home, that whole benefit that comes there. I just want to caution the governor on some of these things, that we don't put these that are much needed out of business by virtue of how we spend money in some of these areas. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Thank you, Senator Kiffmeyer. Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would go back to the chart Ms. Batan just had, and there was a section in there with the BIP OC funding. Could you explain that a little bit better to me? I think it's an additional appropriation. It was just on the last slide.
Certainly, Senator. This is.
And I forget how
Yes.
much you had on there. I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, Senator Ingebrigtsen, this is funding that's intended to expand rigorous coursework for Black and Indigenous students and people of color, to expand the opportunities for advanced placement courses, international baccalaureate courses, and concurrent enrollment in career and technical education. And so it would be grants to school districts to expand those opportunities.
Okay.
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And so apparently that has not been going on in the state of Minnesota? Is that a fair question?
Director Raton.
Senator Ingebrigtsen, my understanding of this is it's to help address the opportunity gaps that do exist. And so it's to ensure that there are more opportunities for students in these groups, because they have been historically not participating at the same level.
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Yeah, not totally understanding and never been part of the K-12 or higher ed. I guess I just wondering if the opportunities have not been there for everybody, but I'll just leave it at that for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Senator Franson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have a question regarding the equalization funding, but I just also want to point out, given what Senator Kiffmeyer mentioned about childcare, that we also had interactions with districts who stepped in to take care of childcare for essential workers. And I know, at least in some of the districts that I represent, they had to shift money around and they weren't able to bring money from their fee-for-service. So they actually had to change their budget to address the needs because of COVID. So those interactions, as well as the ones that she mentioned, Senator Kiffmeyer mentioned, are important to see the whole picture. And my question is about the equalization is in the budget, the governor's budget. Is that, seems like that's state money, but are we expecting federal transfers for that as well? My assumption was yes, but maybe I was erroneous on that.
Director Raton?
Senator Franzen, no, this is for formulas that are a mix of state aid and local levy, and it would increase the amount of state aid that's contributing into those formulas.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Franzen?
Thank you. And so we're not expecting any federal transfers to deal with the equalization issue. You mentioned some formulas that would go directly to districts. On this particular issue, we were not expecting anything coming from the federal government. I just want to clarify.
Director Raton?
Senator Franzen, I don't know if I'm totally following, but know that the Title I funding I was mentioning that goes directly to districts is the federal money from the last bill, and that goes to school districts for their operations, but it's not related to the specific levy state aid formulas that we're talking about in the equalization item.
Senator Franzen? Okay.
Thank you.
Director Raton, perhaps you can clarify something that Senator Kent mentioned, and I wrote it down. It was 325 FTEs for the 47 million on the student support personnel. Is that correct?
Yes, and it's a dollar amount per school district, but it's Madam Chair, it's the formula that goes out on a dollar amount per student with a base amount per district, and that's just an estimate of the number of FTEs that could be supported as a result.
So it could be new or existing FTEs, is that correct?
That's a good question, and let me just verify that. I'm assuming it's new, but let me just verify that.
Okay, thank you. There's a lot of questions on this page, but we're going to keep rolling because we have business and general fund and transportation. Let's keep rolling. Director Raton.
Certainly. So Laura, if you could pull up the slide deck again. So turning to the next theme that the commissioner mentioned, which is supporting small business and driving economic recovery. The governor's budget includes $50 million in the current year for a small business loan program to assist those businesses that are hardest hit by the pandemic. This program would provide forgivable loans to those in consumer-facing businesses focused in areas such as entertainment and the cultural sectors. The governor's budget also includes $6 million for assistance to small businesses. It says $3 million on the slide, but it is $3 million per year. And this assistance would take the form of technical assistance, capital support, as well as supporting incubator spaces for small businesses. In addition to that, there's $50 million for the expansion of broadband across Minnesota to continue the build out of the broadband network. There is $5 million in the governor's budget for Launch Minnesota, which is focused on growing Minnesota's innovation economy by accelerating startups and attracting talent. And there's also $7 million in the Angel Tax Credit, which provides a credit for investors that make equity investments in early stage companies. Laura, if you could turn to the next slide.
Director Raton, I do have a question on that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
The broadband development of $50 million, how is that going to interact with the, what is it, $170 million from the federal government that it apparently is not coming directly, that's coming through contracts? But could you clarify that interaction?
Yes, and Madam Chair, I would defer to Deed on that question because I don't know that we fully know yet exactly how the federal funds will flow. We've been told that they won't be granted directly to the states. And so I think DEED would need to provide that response in terms of whether we know yet how those two will interact.
Okay. Well, Mr. Fisher is making a list of all the questions that we've got, and we need answers to. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. I like I see the Angel tax credit. It seems a little lower than we've had in the past, but is there any policy change to make the Angel tax credit permanent, or is this still only one-time funding?
Director Raton.
Senator Pratt, this is once again one-time funding.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Director Raton. Let's continue.
Certainly. So the third theme that the commissioner had mentioned is supporting working families. The first item mentioned on this list, and I want to just highlight in all of these kind of buckets, these are just some illustrative examples that it is not comprehensive of all the items in the budget that relate to each of these themes. In the supporting working families area, there is an expansion of a one-time payment for up to $750 million or $750 to MFIP participants. That would come at a total cost of $24 million and would be paid from federal TANF funds. The governor's budget also establishes a paid family medical leave program, which would provide wage replacement for family and medical leave. It would be funded through an employer and an employee paid premium. The governor's budget also includes an update to the rate paid to providers through the Child Care Assistance Program, bringing the rate to the 30th percentile of the most recent market survey. And this is paid with federal dollars through the Child Care Development Fund at a cost of $48 million. And then the governor's budget also includes investments in working families through tax credits, the working family tax credit, as well as the expansion of the first tier of the income tax. And I'll talk about those in a bit more detail when we get to the slide that breaks out all of the revenue changes. So with that, Laura, if we turn to the next slide.
Director Raton, a quick question on the paid family and medical leave on the premium. What does that generate, and what do you need to implement that?
So the premium is a 0.6% premium, and it can be split between the employee and the employer. I'm just going to flip to the page here that tells me the total revenue generated. I think it generates about $800 million a year once it is fully phased in. Yes. So in the premium would begin mid 2023 and fully phased in 24. And so at that point, it would be generating $862 million in 2024.
Okay. And could you tell me, before I go to Senator Benson, how much left in the Child Care Development Fund after the $48 million for the CCAP rate increase?
I can certainly get that answer for you. I can probably get that just from a team member and get back to you in a moment.
Thank you. Senator Benson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just for the committee, we, on the child care development, we actually only need to go to 25% to be in federal conformity. So yes, we have to update to the most recent survey, but we don't have to go 30%. So there is some flexibility in that number. Mr. Raton, for the committee, could you tell us where the TANF fund ends up at the end of second biennium with the commitments you've made, maybe what it is now, and with what it ends up being at the end of the second biennium?
Director Raton?
Just so I understand, Senator Benson, do you mean at the end of 24 and 25 or at the end of 22,
Yes.
23?
24 and 25.
I can get that answer quickly here.
Thank you.
Great. We'll let you fill in the blanks there, Director Raton, when you're ready with that answer, and you can keep going if you'd like.
Thank you. So this next slide just provides the traditional overview we give of the total spending in the governor's budget. in the general fund broken down by bill area. So you can see the changes in spending by bill area. Overall, we're spending 1.3 billion in 22-23 and 176 million in 21. So it's important to note those 21 investments as well. They are largely in the areas of E12 education, public safety, and in economic development. If we could turn to the next slide. So this slide gives an overview of the changes on the revenue side. As Commissioner Showalter mentioned, on net, the governor's budget increases revenues by 1.636 billion. I will walk through each of these relatively briefly. As I mentioned before, the governor's budget increases the amount of the working family credit for all Minnesotans that are currently eligible for the credit. And the credit rates are increased proportionately by about 18%. So under this proposal, approximately 313,000 households would see an average increase in their tax credit of approximately $160. This proposal also allows taxpayers with an individual taxpayer identification number to qualify for the working family credit, as long as they meet the income and other eligibility requirements for the working family credit. And that's reflected on the third line on the chart. The governor's budget includes an expansion of the first tier of the individual income tax. So essentially it lowers the income threshold for the second tier of the income tax. And that means that taxpayers with their last dollar in the second tier of the income tax will see a reduction as more of their income is taxed at the first tier rate rather than the second tier rate. And you can see that reduces taxes by 95 million. I mentioned previously the Angel tax credit, and you can see that reflected here at $7 million for the Angel tax credit. And then in terms of tax increases, the governor's budget includes a fifth tier income tax. It establishes the fifth tier at a rate of 10.85%. And it's for incomes over $1 million for those that are married filing jointly, $750,000 for head of household, and $500,000 for single filers. The capital gains tax is also increased. This proposal adds an additional income tax rate or surcharge that applies to long-term capital gains. The surcharge is 1.5% on capital gains and dividend income over $500,000 and up to $1 million, and 4% on income over $1 million for capital gains. The corporate franchise tax is also increased, and this proposal increases the corporate franchise tax to 11.25%, and that increase would be effective beginning tax year 21. Additionally, with business taxes, there's also a proposal related to previously taxed foreign income. This proposal creates an addition for foreign income that has been repatriated to the United States, and the tax would apply to foreign income received both by corporate and pass-through businesses, and is effective retroactively to 2016 for 965 income and to 2018 for income under the GILTI provisions. Additionally, there is a change to the qualified data center exemption. Oh, excuse me, I skipped past the cigarette tax and vapor tax. So the governor's budget also includes increases to the cigarette tax and a tax on vapor products. The governor is recommending raising the cigarette tax by $1 per pack. The last major increase was in 2013, and as you probably recall, in 2017, the annual inflation adjustment for the tax was repealed. So then returning to the qualified data center, this is modifying the sales tax exemption for the qualified data center software purchases. It's decreasing the period for the exemption from 20 years to 5 years, and limiting the refund from 100% to 50% of the sales tax paid on all software purchases. And this is a tax expenditure that had continued to grow beyond what we were originally anticipating when it was enacted in 2011 and modified in 2013. And then the governor's budget is also reinstating the estate tax exclusion. It reinstates it at 2.7 million, a decrease from the current exclusion of 3 million. The proposal also adjusts the small business and farm property estate tax exclusion in order to maintain the current level of 5 million for those estates. And again, in total, the changes in the tax package net 1.636 billion in additional tax revenue in 22 and 23.
Thank you. I think we'll pause for questions. Senator Benson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Ms. Raton, who would have an individual tax identification number but not a social security number to file under?
Director Raton?
So my understanding is this is individuals that again, don't have a social security number. So I think it is dependent on immigration status.
Okay, that's
Senator Benson?
And then, Madam Chair, and I know this isn't a tax committee, the corporate finance tax, where does that put us ranking nationwide? And maybe Commissioner Showalter, I'm not sure if he's still here, can opine on what that would do to the likelihood of a business expanding here.
Commissioner Showalter?
Sure. Madam Chair, Senator, I'm not sure, and I'm just looking through my notes about state rankings. I know that's something the Department of Revenue has gotten. We may be able to find that. I think the key thing about the corporate franchise tax is to understand that it's not like it used to be, where the business tax is really about the location of the business. It's about doing business in Minnesota. So, like other states, it is about how much business activity is going on in Minnesota, so that whether that business is located in Delaware, California, Texas, or any other place, it's how much business are they doing in Minnesota, and that's the allocation of it. In some ways, I think that is a tax change in the tax policy that the legislature and the governor has put on it in past years, that ensures that there's kind of a tax fairness whether a business is located here or not. And it allows the businesses that are located here to then enjoy, the excellent workforce, the climate, the services that are provided in Minnesota. And so, to your ultimate question, I would argue, and I would say that the structure of that tax doesn't really affect the location of the tax.
Senator Benson?
And so, Madam Chair, there comes a point when taxes actually have a chilling effect on whether a company is willing to do business in Minnesota. And so this provision would make it harder then for established companies to get new vendors in who are willing to do more business in Minnesota. And so I guess I'm concerned. We had a really good hearing, Madam Chair, you were there with our Medical Alley folks, and we're directly competing with Boston on medical technology. And if we don't pay some good attention to what we're doing, are we going to kill the goose that laid the golden egg?
Commissioner Showalter?
Madam Chair, Senator, a great question. And in the case of, a international market, such as what the Medical Alley and their businesses are competing for, I just want to note that this tax really would affect only those sales that are inside of Minnesota. And so, those activities that are being sold in other countries, in other states, really depend on the legislatures in those jurisdictions and what tax rate they're applying. So those are two different things.
Senator Kiffmeyer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Probably one of these areas here that I find has had a significant effect in the past on Minnesotans, and that is the cigarette tax increase and it says here, vapor tax. One of the things I remember so greatly the last time that cigarette tax was raised, which, by the way, is a very regressive tax to begin with. It hits the low-income folks the hardest. But worst of all, the reason why we have vaping is because of the last cigarette tax increase. We ended up with cigarettes being imported from Canada, from our neighboring states. Cigarettes were coming in. But prior to that, vaping was used very little. But after that, because of the cost of the cigarettes, they ended up going to vaping. And as you know, vaping has its own health effects. We know about vaping lungs and the issues that happen there with some folks when they unwittingly use them in the wrong way. But I think it's a very short-sighted effort to raise money, first of all, to those who can least afford it, and secondly, the consequences of that sort of thing, and that would be very disappointing to see that happen again. So it looks like $150 million and $155 million, but the source and the impact that it has on the people of Minnesota were very negative the last time there was that kind of a tax. So I would hope the governor would strongly reconsider doing that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Kiffmeyer. No further questions. Let's move to the chart. Director Raton?
Thank you, Senator Rosen. If you'll pull up the presentation again, Laura, thank you. So this next chart provides an overview of the change in reserves in the governor's budget recommendation. As the commissioner mentioned, as part of the budget solution, the governor is recommending a use of $1 billion in the reserves in 2022 to address the current deficit. And so what you'll see in the chart is that the total reserve amount is declining into 2022 from the $2.377 billion to $886 million. You'll notice that that is obviously more than $1 billion in decline between 21 and into 22. I want to highlight that the reserve is also already declining in 22 because of the budget deal reached at the end of the 2019 session, where we planned the use of $491 million in the reserve in FY22. So this adds $1 billion in reserve use in the governor's budget. Additionally, the governor is using $39 million of the reserve in 23, and this is part of meeting the language of the Blue Ribbon Commission. The governor did recommend about $61 million of the Blue Ribbon Commission recommendations, but did not recommend another $39 million. So we're using $39 million of the reserve in 23 to reach that $100 million target that was set forth as part of the Blue Ribbon Commission. The other change I want to make sure I highlight here is, as part of the governor's budget, there's also a $100 million cap starting in 22 on the stadium reserve. And so you can see that the stadium reserve, which is the gray bar at the top of the chart, is held constant at the $100 million. As a result of this, there's about $130 million that falls to the bottom line of the general fund in 22-23 instead of going into the stadium reserve.
Director Raton, I'm sure we're going to have a full hearing on the stadium reserve. But let me just get the figures straight. So we're about $1.357 billion out of reserves and out of the stadium account for the 4 years. Is that correct?
That sounds correct to me, Senator Rosen. I hadn't totaled them in that way, but yes, that sounds correct.
Okay. Senator Benson, do you have any thoughts on the Blue Ribbon Commission?
Madam Chair, I want to see the fiscal notes that are associated with some of these provisions. I'm disappointed that they couldn't find another $38 million out of that process. I mean, the $100 million goal wasn't out of reach. And some of these provisions, frankly, the durable medical equipment provision was included in our budget years. And it never came to fruition. And so until I see the actual fiscal notes associated, not just the change pages, when they did the last durable medical equipment change, they just assumed a 38% savings, and it wasn't even economically viable for people making the delivery of those services. So we're going to have to see how this bears out. I don't know if even with the 38 million from the reserves, we meet the 100 million goal.
Thank you, Senator Benson. Hated to put you on the spot there, but I also have an answer on your TANA question for FY25. The answer is 524,000.
524,000.
Excuse me, million.
Thousand.
Okay. No, I think
There's some zeros missing.
I think you're
Okay, I
correct
just
on
wanna
1,000.
verify. I think it's 1,000.
Yes,
Is it?
Senator, it is.
Okay, 524,000. Yes, thank you.
So the current balance is significant, and we're going to be spending all of that down. And then what happens the biennium after? We're going to have to take these payments away from folks. And so I think this TANF money can be better used by, targeting people, helping to get them into the workforce, building some bridges. But draining that fund down to 524,000 sets us up for big trouble in the next in the biennium that's off balance sheet. If I could, Mr. Nauman, that would get a big asterisk on my spreadsheet if I had that much off balance sheet, off spreadsheet impact, I think. I won't put you on the spot to commit to that, but.
And I won't miss, Mr. Nauman, welcome.
Madam Chair, just the budget rules do call for spending that continues off the tracking period to have an asterisk. So I think that's what Senator Benson is referencing. This has been a discussion point in the HHS budget in the past.
Very good. Okay. Thank you. So the long-term budget outlook, Director Rattan.
Certainly. Senator, I will have Laura again pull up the slide. Thank you. So this is a look at both 22, 23, and 24 and 25 in terms of the structural view of the budget. Again, when we look at the structural nature of the budget, we're looking just at the revenues in that biennium compared to the spending in that biennium. And as you can see in 22, 23, we have a structural gap in this budget, and it's because we are relying on one-time sources in terms of both carry forward and the reserves. And so you'll see that the structural gap in 22-23 is 1.259 billion. The structural gap does continue into 24 and 25 at 713 million. However, we are relying on balance forward from 22-23 into 24-25 of about 470 million. So you can see at the bottom of the chart that there is still a gap, even with the balance forward in 24-25 of 243 million. And with that, I will pause there if there are questions.
Well, Director Rattan, we're just kind of soaking this in. The revenues are about over that 5-year projected period is 3.16 billion tax increase, and the spending is 3.130 billion. And then you've got the 1.3 or 1.4 out of the reserves, and then a negative balance in 24 and 25 of 243 million. So I just wanted to get that on the record, members. And any thoughts on the governor's budget? Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a question I think also impacts the budget and also the tails. and that is, question that I have is kind of taking a global look at the whole budget here now that we've gone through each of these areas. But how many new FTEs are included in the governor's budget? How many new FTEs overall total? Are any of them required in order to fulfill federal grant agreements? Those are those two questions. So maybe then I have another one, Madam Chair. So how many new FTEs in the governor's budget, are any of them required to fulfill federal grant agreements?
Director Raton.
Madam Chair, Senator, I do have that information. I just need a moment to pull that up, and I don't know that I have a breakdown of what's required for the federal grants, but I certainly have a total of FTEs. So I'll just take 1 minute to find that document.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Okay, maybe I'll give her my other question as well, since they're kind of looking these up. Is there an expectation, I think one of the concerns, this is where the tails come in, that sometimes you get this one-time money, and then you add those FTEs, and then when that one-time money goes away, are you still required to keep those FTEs in the future? That's a huge, absolutely huge impact for us that we have to consider as well. So those three questions would be helpful. And I just want to make a comment while we're waiting for that. I was looking at this structural imbalance to the negative. So we've raised taxes, revenues here, incredible. Fifth tier, capital gains, corporate, cigarette tax, limit the qualified data center, reinstate the estate tax, and so on, and yet we still have a negative in the governor's budget. That's really quite amazing, and all the federal money that's coming in on top of it all. I don't know that any of these are necessary whatsoever, especially in light of the federal money that's coming in.
Thank you,
Madam-
Senator Kiffmeyer. Commissioner Showalter.
Madam Chair, Senator, appreciate those comments. I just want to point out that that ongoing budget view, I appreciate your interest in that and commitment towards that, because, you know, while FTEs and reporting those is available in the individual federal funds asks, it's available in the budget, and I'm sure the budget director will get you that figure in a second. It's also places where we've got kind of gashing holes of ongoing commitments that we weren't recognizing, whether it's on some of our mass transit obligations and some of our childcare obligations, or the $491 million that we took out of the reserve to finance and make our structural balance look better in previous budget deals. So there's I think, a tension here that we're all kind of working together to make sure that we've got an ongoing structural picture. And you know, I understand that the operating expenses is something you're looking at closely. I appreciate that, and I think that's a place where, you know, even some of the obligations that we took on in the most recent special sessions has ongoing implication for our agencies that we had to pick up in the governor's recommendation. So I think the more that we as MMB and the Finance Committee can work together to take a continued look on ongoing obligations and recognize those, it gives us a better place to view the ups and downs and the sustainability of our budget picture. It makes it a little bit more apples to apples. So I just appreciate that long-term look. Certainly, that's part of what the governor's budget has to do, is take that whole picture and put it together. The budget director, you do have that FTE figure?
Director
Yes, I
Raton.
do. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Kiffmeyer. The total new FTEs is 355 FTEs, but that's across all funds. I also want to highlight that many of those are in the area of public safety.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Yeah, I think, okay, so 355 FTEs are included in the governor's budget. Are any of them required to fulfill federal grant agreements?
Director Raton.
Madam Chair and Senator Kiffmeyer, we would have to look at that in more granular detail. We don't have reporting that pulls that out separately.
Okay, Madam Chair, like you said, we have lots more questions, but I think, you know, my goal today was to gather data, gather information, but I will comment, the reason why we have the reserve right now is because We held the line on spending and also the tax increases, but we so greatly underestimate the power of a strong economy and the revenues, increased revenues it brings to the state. But it does it by the private sector economics, rather than taking money out, which is what we're doing in this proposal, and instead leaving it with the people. I know there are needs, I know there's issues, but I'm looking forward to delving in deeply to this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you, Senator Kiffmeyer. And I think some of your questions that you were asking will be worked out with the individual committees and the commissioners. They will be having and are having their hearings on the governor's budget. And we need to get those answers on the federal funds, especially to the federal grant funds. So, and I understand, Director Raton, that it's fairly impossible to answer those questions at this point, but that's why we are taking full advantage of the 20-day full review to get those answers and see how it intersects with our general fund. Yes,
And
Director Raton.
Senator, if I could circle back to a couple questions. I know Senator Benson had asked about the CCDF balance. In our fund statements, we're reflecting $13 million balance in that fund at the end of 24-25. I do want to highlight, though, that is not taking into account the $137 million in federal funds from the most recent federal bill. And then I also want to highlight on the federal funds question and FTEs. Those are called out separately in the federal funds table and in the information in the budget book. I just don't have them aggregated all together.
Thank you, Director Raton. Senator Benson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I wanted to step back. I actually went back to my budget book from December of 2019 to pre-pandemic. We had a structural surplus. And yes, COVID has been devastating for so many parts of our economy. But I don't see in this budget a respect for the fact that we had a stable, growing economy. We were running surpluses. It looks like the administration has taken this opportunity to make some significant changes that are permanent, even though we're in a temporary deficit situation. So if we look at the November forecast that was looking at fiscal year 2020 and 2021, total spending was $48 million. And the budget we just looked at has projected spending of $55 million. That's a massive increase over this budget window. And I am keenly aware that COVID has fundamentally changed some things. But the massive growth in FTEs, in tax revenue, is not respectful of the fact that we were in a growth pattern pre-COVID. And so I am concerned that we are structurally building in government growth instead of settling in and focusing on the core of our economy, making sure that our small businesses recover, that our kids are, re-engaged in very effective educational recovery. This past year has been really tough on, yes, the healthcare sector, education, and small businesses. And they need a boost to get them back to where they were, and we can look for improvements going forward. But this is a massive amount of growth from where we were in November of 2019. Our forecasted spending, again, was $48 billion, and now we're looking at $55 billion.
Thank you, Senator Benson. Senator Champion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was listening to Senator Benson, and perhaps what she said, caused me a little confusion that I would like the commissioner to speak to. Senator Benson said that as she looked back at the 2019 and other books that I don't have in front of me right now, she said that there was a structural growth pattern. That's the wording that she used. And it's my understanding that it appears to me that doesn't seem to line up with what I think I've heard, which was that in the previous bienniums, there was a call for us to remove money from the reserves in order to make sure that the budget or the balance sheet looks much better than what it was. And I want to make sure that that's accurate. And so if the commissioner can speak to that, because that seems to be inconsistent with what I hear Senator Benson saying.
Commissioner Showalter.
Madam Chair, Senator, yeah, I think what you're referring to, Senator, is early in the presentation I mentioned about $491 million that was used and taken down from the reserves. So as we look at our reserve picture, it had been over $2 billion, but it was drawn down prior to the November forecast simply because it was part of the budget structure to support the spending and make sure that that was part of the revenue picture pre-COVID. And so that is absolutely part of the, I think, long-term view I think that we all want to get to is making sure that we're sustaining our commitments with ongoing revenues.
And
Senator Benson.
Madam Chair, to Senator Champion's point, we had a structural surplus in each of the years prior. And yes, there was this drawdown in order to close a budget deal, a drawdown out of the reserves. But we had a structural surplus projected for years prior to COVID. So our budget structure was one in surplus if we stayed within forecasted spending and within forecasted revenue. If you decide to change forecasted spending and you don't change forecasted revenue, then you end up having to go into the reserves, which is not a responsible choice, but it got the budget deal closed. But going forward, we're going to have even more projected revenue and still more projected spending. I hope we're paying attention. If this budget goes through, we are draining the TANF fund and we are creating a structural deficit going forward.
And Madam Chair, if
Senator
I might,
Champion.
so I'll keep it brief because I know that we're winding down to the end of the hour. It just seems to me as I listen, and I listen very intensely to the information that's being shared, and I can't help but think that what Senator Benson is saying seems to be inconsistent with the information that has been provided, which was even if you are able to say that there's a structural balance of revenues and spending and how there was a surplus, that doesn't take into account a true picture, because it's my understanding that even if you didn't change any additional spending at all, that we would still have a structural deficit because you're not including inflation. And the very things that you need to pay for are affected by inflation. And so therefore, it's not a true picture because we're not including inflation, which happens every single year. And so I just want to make sure that we're being careful, and I embrace the commissioner's comments when he says, I think it's clear or important for us to work together as a finance committee with the administration and others, because this is us as one Minnesota. And so if I'm wrong, Commissioner Showalter, am I wrong about what I'm saying?
Senator Champion, we have one more comment from Senator Kent, and I would really like to get her in.
I'm sorry.
If you don't mind. Yes, thank you. We can
don't
continue
mind
this conversation with the commissioner. I'm sure we will continue this conversation about the structural balance, but Senator Kent, before we go.
And I have to go, so I just don't want you to think I'm getting off because I'm not happy. I have to leave. Okay, I'm just saying that. Okay.
Thank you, Senator Champion. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as Senator Champion leaves, I do want to follow up. Basically, my question was very much along the lines of his, and to make a request. Because I remember very well in the February forecast and responding to that forecast, that when you look into the out years, we were not seeing a structural balance. We were not seeing a structural surplus because of the increasing nature of some recent tax cuts. The revenue was not going to be meeting the forecast spending. And to Senator Champion's point, we know that if we don't have a surplus, we cannot keep up with inflation in education unless we make cuts elsewhere. And so that was definitely not going to be an option. So what my request would be, both to Commissioner Showalter and to Mr. Nauman, is to pull back up the spreadsheets from, whether we want to look at the February forecast pre-pandemic or the November forecast of 19, and let's look at those numbers, because I appreciate that Senator Benson is citing something she's got available to her, but I think the committee should have the numbers that we can all look at, that look into the out years and show the inflation story, which was definitely included, because I remember talking about it in February of 2020.
Well, thank you, Senator Canton. I think we will continue this conversation, obviously. I just texted Eric Nauman and Mr. Fisher. We are going to have a committee on structural balance, budgetary balance, and look at this. I think it's worthy of that. Members, thank you very much for this great discussion today, and Commissioner Showalter and Budget Director Rattan for being here to present the governor's budget. Very, very good discussion. Members, we are having two hearings next week. Tuesday, we're going to have Senate File 3 before us, and on Thursday, I'm not sure what on Thursday we're going to have, but Senate File 3 will be on Tuesday. Not sure if we're going to continue with hybrid. I might need to talk about this. A little clunky today. So thank you for your patience, and we got through it. With that, the meeting is adjourned.